Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Ethics Walk the Talk. I'm your host, Blake Peterson, and my guest today is Mark Mathia. Mark, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Blake. Thanks for having me, and I love the podcast. Absolutely love it.
Appreciate it. Well, we've been trying to get this on the books for it feels like 2 years now.
Yes.
Every time it's like, yeah, let's make sure we do it. Let's make sure. So I'm really glad that it worked out.
Yeah,
today
me too.
we can get you on. I think the timing, the universe knew we had to push this back a little ways.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
So,
yes.
Well, a little introduction so our guests can get to know you. First of all, you were on The Sweet Life with Christy Anderson before. And so I encourage our guests to go back and listen to that. It was a great episode, very insightful. And you also have a couple of your own podcasts you can find on YouTube. If you go and search Mark Mathia or on Apple Podcasts, by the way, you can hop in and listen to them. We'll remind you that at the end. But so Mark is Omaha's executive coach. Right. And so he has been a strength-based coach. He has 15 years as an entrepreneur and 30 plus years in C-suite positions, some of which I don't even know what they stand for, the letters, so it's interesting, man.
I don't know if I do either, but
yeah. It's a title. It's a title,
exactly.
Right? You were a former U.S. Army and Naval Reserves. You are a mental health advocate. You were formerly on the board of the Business Ethics Alliance, and now you're actually helping with our Education Council going forward, which is fantastic. Lives in Omaha. You and I both love Disney, which we connected about a minute ago. The arts, and a big fan of Denver Broncos.
So and I hear we're not the same there. So we're going to talk about the ethics of being born in Colorado and not a Bronco fan.
I know it. Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised the reasoning I'm going to come up with to justify it. But now a big thing here. So obviously you have a business communication degree from Dana College and an MBA from Bellevue University.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the start of it. And I, when you and I met, you were working with Signature Performance and helping create their culture. You have created a ton of great resources, I feel like, for employees and helping to build culture around companies. And now you have taken to being a coach for executives to help them take the next step of their business, grow intentionally, and also I assume add those cultural pieces into the company, which so many people, founders, who are just ingrained in everything every day might struggle with. Can you maybe we start there just talking about what led you to executive coaching and why you do it?
Yeah, well, first of all, for me, coaching is a calling. It's working with the human. And that's where everything tends to come back to when I start to think about it. When I do evaluation and you're in investments, so you know this, but when you start to value companies these days, the true value isn't our buildings, isn't our assets. Sometimes it's our technology, but not even all the time. It's the people tied to the technology. It's the teams that are running things on a day-to-day basis. And to overlook that and to not put the proper emphasis on the talent is a real mistake that a lot of us do until it's too late. And so I've always thought proactive nature of talent development, of investing in people. And quite frankly, as an entrepreneur, one of the things I was always convicted by is business ebbs and flows. There's wins and losses, 15-year entrepreneur, have the scars to prove it, Blake. Yeah. And yet in the bad times, in the up times are always great, but in the bad times, you want to make sure that you've poured everything you can into that human that you have responsibility for, so that no matter what transpires in business, that there's a spark, an opportunity, and a hope to keep going on and to continue to build from where you started. So that was kind of the underpinning of that. And honestly, coaching was, I invested it a while ago. I mean, I've been coaching for a long time. It was with the John Maxwell team, and that was my first foray into it. And it was because we were entering a new market. So when I owned that company, we were heavily in the financial sector. Think clients like Wells Fargo, Daimler Chrysler, big into mortgage, auto lending, all those things that got really hit. And I think it was 2008, and really a lot of pressure on, which put a real squeeze on our business model. Well, what happened is we had to enter a new market, and I needed a way to create trust, to build rapport quickly. And so I explored coaching as a side to our business offerings, and how can I help our organization help talent level out. And, that's taken a life of its own. It's been a part of my leadership, no matter what I've done, whether I've been strictly internally, or I call it entrepreneurship. At Signature, certainly an entrepreneur. And I love that I had the freedom to do that. And then now, on the other side of that, as an entrepreneur, the one stable in my career is I believe in coaching because I believe in humanity. And that's the underpinning of true coaching, which is simply this, is that I don't need all the answers, but the person in front of me has them. My job as a leader, as an influencer, is to help them get that answer out. It may or may not be the answer I would give. Doesn't matter. But if I can do that in my role as an influencer, as a leader, then I think there's a real hope for that person to own it, to live it, and to execute on it well. And so that's been kind of the model of my leadership personally, and then a model of my coaching. And the reason I have coaches, right? I like to be coached because I think it's important that we bring out the best in each other every chance we get.
Yeah, and you bring up such a great point. Even you still having coaches, and sometimes we think we know it all, we have it covered, but Tiger Woods at his peak had 9 coaches. I think
so true,
right?
Easy to compare to sports, right? Because it's like a no-brainer. If you don't have a coach, you're not winning,
right?
But when it comes to executives, when it comes to entrepreneurs and business owners, we don't always think like that. We think, what's this investment? What's this coaching? So, to begin the exploration, I think is really important, but to really get to understand that coaching has been around for everywhere. It was just called something different before Tony Robbins put a tag on it, right? It was called leadership.
Right.
And it's the purest form of leadership that there is. It's how do I get the best out of those around me? And that's where coaching started. And now we've just put a label on it. But to have somebody, have a coach, have someone speaking to me, help me find and identify my blind spots. And yes, Blake, I have some. It's not my love of Broncos, but there is a few things that I want to be aware of. I want to lead better in. I want to continue to grow myself, because as I grow, as the tide comes in, all ships rise. And so it's just really important. So I always say that, if you have a coach, if you're working with someone, they better have a coach. And I even take that so far into the mental health side. If I'm going through counseling, my first question to my therapist would be, do you go to counseling? It's just that important that we keep sharp on our skills, so that we're the best we can be to serve others the best they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's some people may be confused about what coaching really entails. And you have coaching, there's mentorship, there's counseling. How do you differentiate coaching, even though you may have little bits of other things sprinkled in, but what makes coaching so unique, and especially how you really start to work with these executives?
So I think that's really important, because there's all these different kinds of interventions and they get intermingled. And as an industry, we've kind of intermingled them. And I would throw on consulting is a whole nother branch to this, but really in the nutshell, here's how it goes down. Counseling heals the past. And each one of us need to get past things, right? Whether it's agreements, it's wounds, it's traumatic things that have happened to us. And I think it's so valuable for people to have the freedom. Really, I think it's so valuable when you think of, I was just watching Scott Anderson at Addie's USA give an award, and they had their big banquet, and, helping veterans, right? Veterans who are afraid to go get the mental help they need through therapy. And I think it's just so important that counseling is there to help heal the past, to get us to today. And so that's how I basically break it down. Counseling, the past, okay? Mentorship. I get a lot of people saying, hey, I need a mentor. I want a mentor. And I love mentor. I have lots of mentors. And I think mentor is really important. But here's the key differentiator. A mentor will bring you to where they are at. Meaning a great mentor will teach you what they know. And hopefully, if you're really wise, you're taking lots of notes, you're honoring the time, and you're making sure you don't make their mistakes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So you'll get to as good as they got. Coaching is different, because coaching will take you to where you can grow to. There's a unique difference about coaching, because it's not limited to where I've gone or where I've got. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, the hope is that you can rise to your full potential. And only by understanding yourself can you get that way. And coaching will pull that out of you, so that we're looking at today forward.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes in a coaching conversation, we have to go back to get forward. So there are times when we go through some things to kind of work on those, fine. But if we camp there too long, that's when, the mental health advocate Mark comes out, and I've taken lots of courses on identification of those things so that I can do a handoff, right? So that we can get the help for the past while I primarily focus on the future.
Yeah.
And so that's really where coaching comes in. You come into a coaching relationship so that you can find your leadership voice, so that you can define your leadership vision, and so that you can lead the best you want to lead and where you want to go. And that has nothing to do with where I'm at, other than my job then in that case is to help pull that out and help you see that and help you prepare for what that future might look like. Yeah. Then I threw in the consulting wing. I have to do this because this is my thing. I'm a pure coach, right? Yeah. So this belief that you have the answer within you, Blake, and that my role would be to pull it out and help you see it so that you can live it and own it. That's different. Now, as a consultant, I can go in and fix systems. I work on strategies. I work on engagement and employed, how's things broken up. Yeah. But that's different. But there's a lot of consultants passing themselves off as a coach. Yeah. But real coach is about leadership, and it's about developing individual talent to the best that they can be. And I think it's really important to have those differentiators, because as an executive, I want to know where I'm going, where am I shopping, and my goals may be different. If I need a mentor, I'll get a mentor. If I need a counselor, I'll get a counselor. And if I want to coach, and if it's time for my development and my growth, then that's where I go as a coach. And if I need a consultant to help with my systems or work on a marketing plan, I think of Donald Miller is a great consultant. He calls himself a coach, but he's a great consultant for marketing. One of the best I've ever seen. Yeah. But again, I don't necessarily call what he does coaching.
Yeah, there are those. It's interesting how you were able to break it down like that. And I think for a lot of people listening, they might be thinking, well, which one do I need right now?
Yeah.
And, do you feel like there's obviously there's always going to be some kind of a conflict where each of those people you described, each of those roles, they all make money a certain way, right?
Yes,
and so it's like, oh, I can solve that problem for you. But it sounds like you are very willing to pass off, make recommendations, almost make those referrals and stay in your lane as the coach, or at certain times as the consultant. Is that something that you think is very important?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. And I've walked away a lot of times from situations where it wasn't me. It wasn't a right fit. So typically you always see it, and it's part of the kind of enrollment process, right? You get a session with a coach. Now, really, why is that important? Well, it's to see if there's a good dynamic. Right. Is there cohesion between the two? Do you appreciate the questions being asked or not? And that's two ways, right? As much for the talent or the person that I'm working with as it is for the individual coach who's in there, and you want that to be really solid. Yeah. Now, the same thing as those goals, through the intake process get identified. Sometimes it's clearly what you need is a consultant. And now I do some consulting because I've been into XM or experience management and driving cultures a part of what I do, separate from coaching. There's coaching's interlaced in there, but that coaching thing to me is the ultimate investment in self a leader can make to grow beyond themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it's almost like I feel like my relationship with my coach is so much it's just a conversation. Yeah. And I'm able to use them as a sounding board.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, they're just like pinging me back until I finally dig out, like you said, finding that answer within yourself and identifying those other places you need to go. Well, I'm not going to solve this, so I need to find somebody who can.
Yeah.
And being realistic about it, because in the day-to-day, you just get bogged down. Yes. I'll get to that later. I'll get to it. But really digging that up and realizing what you are capable of and where your time is best spent.
Yeah,
is so important for these executives, I'm sure.
And I think that from the coaching, the intuitive side of it's important, right? So sometimes the experience does come in there. Why? Because I can ask a question that's built on something more than just feeling in the moment. It's can be strategy based or whatever, but it's a question. Yeah. And for you to be able to dig in there and get it and own it, it's really good. It's called the Socratic method, by the way.
Okay.
So lest we forget though, Socrates was murdered. So
that's right. That's right. A lot of people were at that time though, right. So we won't hold that against them. That's a common
Sometimes
theme.
Those questions are annoying. I work with AI. Have you ever noticed that AI always asks another question?
Oh, sure.
It drives me nuts. It's like, no, don't ask me that question right now. But coaching can be like that, but it should be targeted and it should be influenced by wisdom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very important. They've been there, done that, have the knowledge, know-how.
Sure. Yeah.
And you mentioned Maxwell, obviously. Yeah. Incredible. Tons of books. Couldn't recommend that more. Great place to start. But, you know, the ethics of it all, and we are a business ethics podcast and coaching ethics. I know that you've mentioned, you know, ICF. Can you give us a little background on what that is, the certifications you have, and just how ethics does play a role in coaching executives and people on a day-to-day?
Yeah. So you know, when it comes to the ethics of coaching, it's a whole nother field in and of itself. I mean, there's whole certifications on coaching ethics, and part of why I ever joined the International Coaching Federation, or ICF, was because they have a strict code of ethics for their coaches. And it's really important because sometimes I come in as a coach and I'm sponsored by an organization. Now, I was an internal coach for a long time, and an external coach. That even in and of itself requires that really strict confidentiality clause in that code of ethics that comes along with it, so that you can build trust. Because at the end of the day, the coach and the talent, which is what I call clients, that talent, that's a dance of trust. And if that wavers, then there's real issue. You're not going to get the value that you're going to invest in a coach. And so I joined ICF initially because we were setting up an internal coaching system at Signature Performance. And I needed, as an executive leader, to be able to tell my peers, here's kind of the lanes, here's the boundaries that we'll invest in this for our people. And they were great. They were willing to do that. But we need to know, you're not going to come to me and say, hey, what did this person say? Or, hey, what did that stuff had to end. And so the code of ethics is what we started with. And then even as we set up an internal culture of coaches, right? So it was beyond me. There was 2-3 others. We met regularly to talk ethics. What have we ran into that's ethical? Because we always come into situations that we're maybe not prepared for. So as a coach, one of the reasons I have a coach is to talk about those things, to make sure that the work that I'm doing and how I'm handling people's people's coaching sessions are abiding by the ethical standards that the ICF offers. So I would invite anyone to go out to the ICF website and find their code of ethics, so that you know what that coach has said. Hey, this is what I will live by. And there is actually a board to keep us honest about that. But it fell in line. I love ethics. I love that Omaha has a Business Ethic Alliance. It is, to me, one of the greatest gems the city has, because I know it started here and I know it goes beyond here, but Blake, I'm telling you what, it is so important that as leaders and as business owners and wherever we come into this thing, that we keep ethics at the forefront, that the conversation about what's right, what's wrong, and then just admitting that sometimes we don't know, because ethics does walk that fine line of just being, your ethics are a little different than mine. I mean, I cannot believe you can't be a Bronco fan and grow up in Colorado. That is unethical, but it's probably ethical for you. So I think that having that base and understanding. So the International Coaching Federation was the place I first joined to do that, and then was certified through them as a coach as well, which is a pretty rigorous, actually confusing certification process, but I've really enjoyed it, and continue to study ethics and continue to work in mentorship capability, like having coach mentors, peer mentors, to make sure that my business is set up ethically and that I'm approaching my business with ethics top of mind.
Yeah, that's very important. And I have to imagine with some of your clients that there can be some ethical conversations that come up with decisions they have to make, and hard business decisions, relationships they've developed. And you talked about the people that you need to be developing and take care of over time. They have those. Do you find that is very common in your work? And how do you approach, it's a business decision, and there has to be that the undertone of ethics in everything. But how has that maybe ever come up in the past, and how do you approach helping people manage those ethical?
So therein lies the crux of a lot of coaching conversations. But here's the deal, Blake. Everybody's ethics and values are going to morals are a little bit different. So as a coach, I come into those conversations with what I would call a non-judgmental attitude, meaning it's not my role to sit here and judge the ethics of a hiring or firing decision, those kind of things. Right. But as a coach, I better have clear boundaries, and we had to have a proactive conversation about those so that you know what to expect from me, right? Yeah. So if we get into an issue that could have, should I or shouldn't I, is there an ethical consideration? I might bring up, is there an ethical consideration? But I don't have to be the watchdog of my talent's ethics. I simply come into it non-judgmental so that they can explore where they fall out. My hope is that they'll fall out on their ethical place, right? That we tie values to the actions that we're taking so that a leader can be very mindful about the next decision that they make. And if it's the right decision, make the decision. If it's not right, not. Now, what I won't be is the ethical watchdog. Thank goodness, right? Yeah. That world, according to Mark, everyone would wear Disney and Bronco clothes and we'd run around high-fiving. Right. That's, but in all seriousness, I think as a coach, understanding that you have the ability to wrestle with ethical issues with a coach in a safe spot, I think is really important.
Yeah. And almost acknowledging the influence you may have on those decisions. And I think you bring up the values, and I know I've heard you talk about that in the past. And do you find that there are a lot of times when you're starting to work with somebody, they're coming on board, and then, if they're going to start working with a coach, they probably have something of value already created, something of cash flow. They're growing. They want to take it to the next level.
Yes.
Do you find there are a lot of instances in which those people have not yet really clearly defined their values until they start to work with you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Blake, and very intuitive that you picked that up. Yes, because what happens is we get going, right? And in our daily life, one of the things that happens is we're really managed by our achievements, right? And so many of us get on that treadmill of success after success and win after win. We start to look at the scorecard and we start to drive our business towards that, and we forget. So maybe we had values and they're just not top of mind. Again, plug for the Business Ethic Alliance, helping us keep the conversation alive in Omaha, why it's so important. But many times we've either disconnected from deeply held values that we have, or we haven't taken the actual time, which is another thing, because that run for success requires a lot of time and energy. And by the time we get home, it's like feed the dog and go to bed. Yeah. And so I think, more times than not, a conversation about what do you value and why is really important early on in a coaching conversation, so that we can make sure that the strategies as leaders that we employ feed our psychology, our mindset. Yeah. See, there's a big disruption, a big thing happening right now called burnout. And it's legit. Like people are tired, and we thought, AI is coming along, it's going to help us. But right now we're in the process of adding AI, adding technology, and increasing workloads. Yeah, right. It should be reducing. It should be reductive, but it's not. And so what's happening, our executives are learning new systems, learning new things, adapting even technologies to help us function better. But in that adoption, it's requiring more, and it's been additive. That's causing a level of burnout. So what happens is when our strategies in life, our systems, our business decisions, and our values aren't really aligned, it'll never feed our psychology. I just think, Blake, that as a coach, one of my roles is to make sure that whatever those strategies are, that they're feeding that mindset so that that person can be whole. Yeah. And how do we know that? Well, then we use the third part of my unique coaching framework, which is energy, not woo-woo energy, but kind of. It's both the gauge and the gas. Yeah. It's the gauge because you know how you feel. All I'm saying is, hey, executive, hey, leader, hey, entrepreneur, take time to recognize you feel a certain way. Yeah. It's like when we eat really bad food. You probably don't. Every once in a while, I might have.
I certainly partake.
But when you do that, you feel horrible. Yeah. Right. You feel gross. Yeah. All I'm saying is recognize it. Yeah. That's not a good feeling. So that's the gauge, right? Yeah. So your energy will tell you how your mindset or how your psychology is. Yeah. But it's also the gas. And here's where I love working with Tony Robbins, neuro-linguistic programming, all that kind of stuff, because our state of being can change our psychology. Yeah. So what happens when we can take our strategies of business and our energy as gas and gauge and have them both additive and feeding our mindset. See, that sharpens a leader. Yeah. Then we go to our tasks or our to-dos or achievements. Yeah. And instead of doing more just to win, we focus on less, but better. So do less things great with excellence. Really do it well. Yeah. But it's less. So it's giving you time to take care of that whole leader. And I think that's really important. So now, by the way, don't hear that. Everyone loves it when I say do less. It's like, that's a breath of fresh air. I want to do less, you know, but it better be less, but better. Because if you do less, but average, you're going to be unemployed. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying less, but average. There is a benefit to this reduction. And if you can get to that point where you as a leader are reducing to the events or the things or the tasks that add the greatest value, think of it even organizationally as you value companies. Yeah. It's those who can really focus on that 20% that's driving 80% of the revenue and put their right time, right energies, you know, come at it with their strengths that are going to produce over the long term, time and time again. Yeah. And so that's the same thing we want to do as individuals.
Yeah. And a lot of times the 80% is so loud in the day-to-day where it's not driving your revenue. It's just in your face and you're thinking it can drain you. And being judicious with your time is very challenging, especially for founders, entrepreneurs who are like do everything themselves types. Right. More often than not, it's hard to find the people that have put the big leadership team in place, offloaded a bunch of things from their plate, understand exactly what they do best, and you know, you're talking about AI, and I feel as though when you start working with a founder, they're coming on board, they want to level up. A big thing I see with the businesses I work with is, of course, hiring that executive team is a huge expense, right? It's a huge undertaking for the company. And if you're not ready to really, you know, that's not going to drive an increase in revenue very quickly, they're not willing to make that investment, right? They can't afford to. Sure. And a lot of times, are you trying to find ways that they can harness this AI to maybe offload some of those tasks without having to make that expensive hire, or how are you dealing with those conversations with people?
Well, so in the coaching conversation, Blake, what we call that is leverage. Okay. So fundamental to any leadership, whether you're a founder of a company, whether you're an executive within a company, is you need to find ways to leverage your time. Oftentimes that's through people. Oftentimes that's through technology. So you cannot be blind or afraid of the technology because you need to be leveraging stuff. Now, when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about high value builds for the long term. Right. So many entrepreneurs, what I'm seeing today is they built great businesses, and those leaders of those organizations who refuse to let go, what happens is at the end of their run, they don't have an asset to be transferred. Absolutely. It's not worth anything. Yeah. And that breaks my heart. So right now, if you look at it with technology the way it's going, we are getting ready to come into a generation where there's going to be a lot of businesses that are just left hanging with no actual value to them. And the legacy that person put into it might disappear. Yeah. And that breaks my heart. That freaks me out. So even as a coach, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, in this entrepreneurial endeavor again, how do I leverage it so that I can use, in this case, technology, AI, the agents, to help me focus on what I want to do, which is stuff like this and work with humans. And I don't want to do the other stuff. I want to work with humans. And so I need to be able to do that and then build systems so that it can carry on. And so I think it just depends, right? So if you want to replace, say, a corporate job with just income, you can do that. But if you want to build a company that has value, that becomes part of your retirement equation, that adds money and puts money back into your family's pocket, that kind of thing, well, it's not a question of can I, it's really can't I? And you need to find the right investment. And that really is dependent upon the leader and the organization and where they're at. But if you're not using the power of leverage, and if you're not really looking at how to do that, see, that's the blind spot. Yeah, the blind spot is this assumption that it's just going to be worth something when I'm done. Yeah. But if you're the doer, and I say most businesses, it's not about the assets anymore. It's not the technology. It's not the building. It's not whatever you think you have in your business. It is the people. Right. And that people. And so if you're the only person, or if you're the people engine because you've micromanaged your way to great success, which many can, there's not going to be any value when you leave. And so you have to look, how do I not just transfer knowledge, but how do I transfer that value? And then if you have that broader perspective of leaving a legacy, you're actually able to gift it and give it and sell it or whatever it is to the next generation who'll take your vision to the next step. And that's really a cool thing.
It is. And I mean, you bring up so many great points. And as I'm a certified exit planning advisor, and that's such a big part of what I do with business owners.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a story that unfortunately I hear too many times. And it's like, well, what's my business worth? Well, I can run a valuation and we do that, but it's like, that doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it.
Yes.
You're right. Yeah. It's like on paper, oh, great, $10 million. But then, I mean, once the LOI comes in and due diligence begins, that number only goes down usually. And especially if they have to keep the founder on, I mean, the earnouts and things that go into these deals, you have to understand if I'm selling my personal coaching business to Mark and Mark is getting in it, it's a very different conversation than I'm talking to the private equity firms who have 1,000 of these conversations a year and they're good at it.
Yes.
They're not going to overpay. That's not what they're in the business of doing.
Right.
So if that's your goal to sell, I mean, I believe over 75% of businesses that go to market don't sell.
Yeah.
And of all businesses, it's between 2 to 5% that actually will. We have a aging generation that is currently owns all of these businesses, and it's been their plan. One day I'm going to sell it because it's been cash flowing for them for years, and that's what they're living off of. And it's just people are taking more notice to it now, and obviously M&A is picking up. But a coach is so important to adding those integral pieces and building the value of your company so that you can leave and the cash flow doesn't stop.
Yes.
Because that happens if you are the head of business development and you're closing all the deals and you're the one going out to lunch every day with your top clients.
Yes.
What's going to happen when you're gone?
Exactly.
How do they continue that? It's tough. Yeah.
Well, and didn't know that, but see, that's the place where a coach can come in there and directively help, right? Say, okay, if that's their goal, right? Then boy, we need to be thinking about what you need to do to use this idea of leverage to build the assets, and that has to be more than you. And I think it's really important because it sometimes catches us. I had a friend who was trying to sell and just disheartened. It's like, man, I've stayed in this business, and a lot of founders, man, they're they'll work forever, and it's great, but still. Think about your legacy. Think about that. And that's why everything we just talked about, when we talk about that methodology of making sure that our strategies, of our business strategies, it's a business thing and it's a personal thing. It's a business thing and a value thing. Yeah. It's all of it. Feed that mindset. It's changing that mindset because for the first time, we might have an entrepreneur listening to this podcast going, I never thought about that. Yeah. My business might be worth less because I'm so good. Yeah. Right. That's a different kind of thing, right? Yeah. And then that energy, just knowing that, make sure your energy tells you. And, the other thing that happens a lot, Blake, too, with especially founders is there's always mountains and valleys, Colorado analogy, right? Yep. We hit the mountain of achievement. And we go to the next mountain of achievement. Right. But what no one tells us is that in between two mountains is a valley. Absolutely. So in order to go up, you have to go down. Yep. And when you go down, what I see is a lot of really great, talented either executives or founders, whatever, who are pitching the tent. And I call that the valley of doubt. Oh. Because that's exactly where we get confused. Like the climb is hard. I'm not good anymore. I won here. And we forget as leaders that if we want to get to that next level, we've got to go down. We've got to go through the valley of doubt. And it's actually in that valley and our failures, our shortcomings, our brokenness stuff. That's where we get the wisdom to live at the top of the next mountain. Yeah. And without that, you're going to ascend to something that you're not ready for. And you see a quick kind of descent after that. Yeah. So I think the whole process is fascinating. It's why I love working with humans. But I think it's really important that we have that mindset right, that we're controlling our energy, and that in those low moments when we're sitting here going, man, I feel horrible, hey, leader, don't pitch your tent. Yeah. Not in the valley of doubt. Yeah. Take the next step. Keep climbing. Yeah. And then micro goals can help them pull themselves out and get back up in the right trajectory to gain, both value in their business and value in themselves, and remind them that any new mountain we climb, we got to climb it a little bit different because we got to go down before we get up, and you're going to learn the wisdom you need, but just be patient with yourself. Don't think this is a new normal and it's going to be that way forever, because typically it's not. No. Yeah. There's
the problems stay. They probably only get bigger and more complicated as the company grows. So I feel for those individuals, and I love them. I mean, I love working with them. That's who I've grown up around, and obviously you as well. And it's just it's fulfilling, and there's still time to fix it.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing, is you don't have to throw in the towel.
Right.
You can come in, you can work on this business, you can put in a few more years and find a way to maximize that value, which I hope every person can, because like you mentioned, they poured so much into these companies.
And I think that's the spirit of legacy that lives on. And I think that might be a value for me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that when I go to the great beyond, that my legacy, what I leave behind, the wake, is something positive. Like I invested in humanity and things are good. And I want that for every single person who's in business, because I think business is a great human endeavor. And if we treat it that way, and if we can build that way, whether we own it or work for somebody else, treat it that way, like you own it, entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it, I think is so important. But it makes it fun, it gives it meaning, and it makes our life worth living, because we have this grittiness we call business. So it's super fun. Yeah.
And to have entrepreneurs within your company, you need to allow that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean handing over the checkbook. Right. Like, that's the thing. People have, that's the confusion around it sometimes. It's like, that's obviously not the case, but if you need to let these people find the best talent, which you've talked about before. I think it's a war on talent right now. That's what we need to do. Get the best people in place. You're going to make mistakes along the way doing it. But once you do find those people, let them do what they do. Reward them, absolutely. Do everything you can to keep them. But get out of their way. Which it's hard to do, right? Especially if you're a small operation and you're not used to growing it. I mean, you came from Signature Performance. Gosh, how many employees were there? I mean, hundreds.
Over 1,000.
Over 1,000.
1,200, 1,500.
Just insane, right? And then you go down to somebody who just has a great manufacturing business, which happens to have 150 employees, and their values, like you mentioned, lie in generational legacy, family dynasty situations. Well, there's a lot baked into that. And do your kids want to do it? What do they value? And then if they do want to do it, but then mom and dad realize we can't just retire, we need cash from this business because we haven't been saving up externally. How do you make that transfer fair for all parties so the business is not put in a position where they can no longer excel and you're still taken care of? I mean, these are obviously, we could talk about this forever. So one of the pieces that I think we're leading to, and you had a great podcast on, was, from surface to sacred. And I appreciated the way you framed the conversation of leadership and how people connect with, their team on not so much just a surface line out. Hey, here's the to-do list. What are we doing? What's the update on this? What's the follow-up? Okay, great. And I'll talk to you later. But really digging into, shallow versus deep leadership. I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about that here.
So inspired by a letter I had gotten from one of my coaches about an individual who actually stepped away from the work because they were writer, content creator kind of thing, because they felt it was shallow and they wanted to have a holy experience in the work that they're doing. Now, that was kind of from a religious perspective too, right? And so it really struck me is that the kind of work I like to do, and I'll call it holy work with a small h, not a capital H, because I think business is just that. Business is set up and it's holy work. In the business of coaching, for an example, people will let me in. Right? We'll discuss their values, why they value it. We will center on those things. Transformation happens. To me, small h, holy work, that's sacred space. But how much time am I allotting for that deep work? Or can I come in and just solve problems, help you get to the next mountain, remind you that this valley isn't your home? And that happens. And there's good things. Tactics are really important. You want a coach who's tactical if you have tactical issues. But I'm just saying that there's more to leadership. And when we allow ourselves to, I would say this, ask the question, are you deep leading coaching? Are you allowing your leadership to be small h, holy, meaning that you're willing to go there? That you're willing to help pass on that legacy. And that legacy is information, right? Blake, I mean, what really it is that, there's two ways that we can do it. We can take the information, we can be the best in industry, and we can keep it to ourselves. and we can thrive during our run. But it's after that run that's so important. But what if we started giving it? Like, instead of being a dam of information, we become a river flowing with information that helps elevate and uplift every single person in our leadership change. And to me, I call that deep work. And that's going into the deep end. And that requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to be authentic. I'm kind of going through all the major buzzwords, but not just saying them. It's like doing them,
right?
Because it gets messy when you start to deal with the human condition. Absolutely. And so you have to be willing to wade into those places, open up chains of communication, be proactive about that so people know what it's like, how you're going to show up. You shouldn't need a weather barometer around your neck so people know how to approach you.
Right. Yeah.
Quite frankly. And people should have an expectancy of, this is who I work with, this is what I can expect, and build deep relationships that way. So for me, the whole concept of what I do as a coach is small h holy work, because it's personal, and it's meaningful, deeply meaningful to me. But I think in leadership in general, I could put that same emphasis on it and just say, look, we can either be the kind of leader that makes really good management decisions, or we can go that next step, which is the deep side, which means I not only care about your production, Blake, I care about you as a person. I care about your family, and I care about you making good decisions for you, which gives me the freedom to have the hard conversation. Because if you're out there doing something that's completely ridiculously stupid, I will have the courage to come say, Blake, that's really stupid.
Yeah, right.
Because I love you, not because I want something or I want to call you out or make you, bump your ego. Right. It's really about, help me with the blind spots so that you can be, able to thrive for the long term.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think, applying that to the decisions of hiring, how you want to establish your culture, conflicts, and also employee retention. I mean, everybody's gonna have to do it a little bit differently.
Sure.
Right. And it might not always be, or do you believe it is? I mean, you're at the top, you're the leader, but is that sometimes hiring the right people who can get to that level, be comfortable, like where people, maybe they don't want to have those conversations with the CEO.
Right.
Right. But finding the right person in HR or whatever their position might be, to go, are you like, is that a really important thing you're trying to work with your clients with, as well as how to structure these conversations in a way they're comfortable with and find more outlets to get to that place?
Yeah, it's probably not something I've intentionally got into, but I have that conversation a lot. And I would say this, my philosophy has always been that it's people first, performance always. So before we go too much into the foo-foo feelings of things, we have to remember that people first, performance always has a standard behind it. And the best leaders understand how to walk that fine line, because I serve the people I lead best when they're successful and the company's thriving.
Right.
When I'm hiring the best clients, and I'm saying yes to the best contracts, that adds wealth to everybody's pocket. When I'm making good hiring decisions, that adds wealth to everybody's pocket, relational equity, everything else. So I would say this, when it comes to specifically what you were saying, I would say I wish more people would take 3 times longer hiring and move a little quicker on the other side of that if necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. But everyone who's moved on, let go, whatever you want to say in that process, they should walk away with dignity, with their held high, and you should have put the proper investment in them, because that's how I, as an executive, would sleep at night. And that's what I certainly would want for my clients. So it is a fine line between what I would call the floofy leadership, right? Yeah. People call it soft. It's not, it's essential. Yeah. If I just said the valuation of your organization is based on the people and talent you leave behind, then it is the most important thing you can do. But it's not necessarily all about their emotional state. There's systems that can be put into place to make sure people are grounded. That's why I'm a mental health advocate. That needs to take place. Yeah. It's not necessarily a manager's role to take that, right? Don't get medicinal on this. Stay really practical and understand that if the business thrives, if the individual thrives, their family thrives, life thrives. And I think incumbent upon leadership, that's our responsibility to get there. So that's kind of how I frame those conversations and how we have those conversations is, you don't need someone to come in here who's a high empath. That might drive you crazy. Yeah. But you want to have a people first, performance always mentality that can be leveraged because it benefits the entire community.
Right. And it can't be a once a year conversation. It sounds like, okay, great. We're having your review and tell me about things at home.
A disaster.
Yeah.
Because that conversation's always around raise time.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens is if you have that once a year conversation about December 1st or November, if they're real proactive, they start really being nice to you and they start really picking up their progress, and they could have drug the whole year until that review time because it's just skewed. So I love what Gallup has taught for many, many years, which is frequent performance-based conversations. And by the way, that to me gets into that small H holy work. Are you brave enough to have the frequent conversations helping people stay aligned, know their job, know when they're doing really well, know when they can do a little better, and there's no surprises. See, that is a winning scenario when it comes to keeping talent in place.
Yeah, because they're going to feel deeply offended if they get down at the end of the year and they thought they've done very well.
Yeah.
Like, well, I noticed this back in March. It's like, well, gosh, why didn't we talk about it then?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's not going to feel good for anybody.
Oh, yeah. That leadership disaster, kitchen sink, an annual appraisal process, like put it off the entire year and then unload.
Yeah.
You that is a horrible leadership strategy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the last topic I actually have here, I want to make sure to talk about, if you can maybe, quickly, because I know you could probably talk about a lot in this, but we think about our audience here today, right? Yeah. We have executives, we have business owners, small business owners, we have the intrapreneurs, we have people who might just be starting out in their career listening.
Yeah.
What do you think is the main pieces that are wrong with the workplace today? And obviously it could change a lot based on the demographic, based on the industry, whatnot. But if you could pinpoint a couple of things you believe are the most wrong with the workplace today, and while you may not have a solution to just provide directly, what would you recommend? Where would you start if it was your task? Mark, wave your wand to go fix this.
Yeah.
How would you do it?
Yeah, that would be good. Well, I would send them to you say, have Blake do an evaluation. No,
there we go.
I think it's really incumbent. I think first of all, we need to understand there's 3 key pillars that we need to balance, and it's not just achievements. So first of all, we have to get off what I call the hedonistic treadmill, which is just going from win to win to win. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it? So think of the broader community of the workforce you serve. Now, most organizations, especially if they listen to this podcast, are there, right? And so then it's like, how do we take stock in the overall person that's in there? So make sure your people are okay. Don't walk around with a bag over your head when your executive team or your leaders are wore out. If you have a system where you have one person leading 50, 60 people in a high pressure situation, it's going to take a toll. Yeah. And we're starting to see that. 2 things that I'm seeing kind of globally that I think's a little worrisome: ethical breakdowns at the top, right? Think viral video that went out of an executive. I think you did an episode on that.
Yeah.
Ouch, right? Yeah. I don't know that or that scenario or what led up, but I'm telling you that's high pressure burnout manifesting itself.
Yeah.
And so we have to have a place for our mindset, for our psychology. We just have to take it serious, right? Yeah. Now, I like to be proactive, but sometimes you have to you have to go back. So whatever that takes, have that in place. Then you have to adjust to make sure that your strategy and your energies are both aligned in feeding that psychology. The healthier your team is, the healthier your organization is. And I'm telling you, it shows in the results. Now, Gallup would call it engagement. Okay. So they would say the highly engaged associates are the ones that are willing to take extra time to make sure things are done right. They put in it. And that's true. That shouldn't be the motive of the leader to get people to work extra hours.
Right.
But what needs to happen is they need to be in that healthy place so that their actions they're working towards is aligned directly with that mission and flowing in alignment with the values, meaning we're not getting to that point of burnout. There is a time in organizations' life cycles where you have to pause and say, do we want to keep growing or do we need to absorb to serve our clients the best?
Right.
Those are brave conversations for leadership teams that you need your leadership team at their best. So if you see the signs, what are the signs? Well, burnout's a sign, right? A blatant one. It's like a billboard.
Yeah.
But, if chronic illness, sickness, tiredness, lack of sleep. There's just normal indicators you can see within the people in your sphere. You might know you're driving too hard at that point. Yeah. Now, do you stop driving? Absolutely not. I said people first, performance always.
Yeah.
You adjust your strategies to make sure that everybody can attack this from the best of who they are, from their strengths, I would say, and relaxed into that. And if you start to tend the people like that, then you're going to be able to get momentum as an organization. And I love what John Maxwell said about momentum. He says, momentum solves 80% of your problems.
Yeah.
And that puts you in a pace and a place where you can actually win every day at work. So I think that's it. I think we have to be mindful, not overly feely. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But we have to be mindful of what we're asking of people, how they're responding to that ask, and then grow together as an organization in line with a common vision, in line with a mission that really matters, that everybody can kind of lean in on.
Yeah, I mean, very well said. I think that's a great place to wrap. And it's all, when you have you're in the valley. Yeah. And the wins, the new clients, what they call it, aren't coming.
Right.
How do we turn around, serve our existing client base better, get some wins, get some momentum, build up the strength in our leadership and our team as a whole.
Yes.
Be ready to climb up the next one.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's perfect. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Where should people go to best connect with you and see more about what you do, and obviously, talk with you about maybe working with you in a coaching perspective?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you'll find me at Business Ethic Alliance events. So I will be there in person.
Yeah.
But you can go to markmathia.com. My contact information is out there. I do have a weekly, I call it a spark. It's a non-sales friend and ally message that I send out weekly to people who want to be on the list. So if that's something they want a weekly spark, it's normally a really bad video of me in something other than my pajamas, but we'll talk about these concepts and I talk about and reflect on some of the things the people I'm working with are not direct, going through and mega themes just to help give value to people. And so that's my effort. Everything I put out there, whether it's my Essentially You podcast, the blog that's on my site, is really designed to be additive and to add value to people. So that would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much again for your time.
Thanks, Blake.
Can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, this is great.
Appreciate it.
All right.